Sunday morning. Welcome to the bunker.
Locked in the bunker, shadow shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pounding, hearts they quake. In the bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown sound.
Welcome to the sound of one man clapping. I am the one man coming to you direct from the bunker at Sunday morning after a 2-week hiatus. I'm here to give you a glimpse into midlife, the slow decline into death, into the pockets of joy that board gaming brings you as you race to the finish line. Goddamn, too dark. Need coffee. Hang on, let me sort myself out. 1 sec. Oh, I'm on my second coffee, so I should be moderately coherent this morning. This is a podcast about board gaming culture, and growing old graciously. This week we're going to go through all the games that were. We're going to review all the campaigns that want your money. Well, not all of them. Ain't nobody got time for that. And we might just get a glimpse into the mania that is my prefrontal cortex in voices in my head. And if I can be bothered after the last 2 weeks that have been, we will give someone the clap. On with the show. Well, welcome back. It's been 2 weeks. I'm back in the saddle. It's been 2 weeks for reasons. Little segue. I have a job and I love the job, right? I don't love working for a living. Working for a living sucks, okay? If you love your work, it sucks a little less, but it still sucks. You got to go to work. You're away from your family. You're away from home. And I love the job I have. But it is at the other end of Sydney. Now, if you don't live in Sydney, which is probably most of you, Sydney is a gargantuan, sprawling city with traffic that sucks balls, right? So, in a given day, my commute could be 4 hours round trip. You add that to a 9-hour workday, and it's a 13-hour day out of the house. It's meaningfully eating into my board game life. No, that's not the real problem. It's like 13 hours a day, the peanuts 10, and I came home, I don't know, 6-7 weeks ago, and I was talking to the peanut, and she sat me down, she kind of patted the couch, she goes, "Hey, Dad, you know this whole, you're always at work thing?" And I mean, yeah. She goes, "What's up with that?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, and I didn't have a good answer for her. Did not have a good answer. She said, "Hey, you know how, I play netball?" And for those of you that aren't in Australia, netball's this weird sport that's kind of like basketball, but not, you're 90% more likely to break your ankle. And I don't know. It's a thing. Netball. She's like, "Yeah, I play netball." I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Are you sure you know I play netball? Because you haven't been in any of my games this year." And I went, "All right, kid." So, long story short, I have quit my job. And not because, I hate my job. My job is fantastic. I work for a great company. But it's just too far away, and it's just sucking the life out of me. And part of that really is what's been eating into, I've been in this job for 5 months, has been eating into my board game life. That's not why I quit the job, but there's some sunshiny stuff coming on the horizon, and that if I'm looking for a job closer to home, a little less impactful, might mean some more weeknight gaming, all good stuff all around. So, last couple of weeks, I've just been out of the house all day. I get home late at night. It's been 13, 14 hours. I just don't have the energy to play too many games. Not complaining. Hashtag first world fucking problems, right? Oh no, Hammers, you can't play enough board games, so you quit your job. I'm not sure if I'm in a very lucky place where financially I can afford to, take a couple of weeks if I have to find a new job. I've got a, great opportunity that I'm talking to somebody about tomorrow. So, I'm not saying quit your job if you can't play board games. That's not what I'm saying, people. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's why I haven't been here. That's why I haven't been in front of the microphone. That's why OMC's got a little quiet on socials, why it's got a little quiet on the mic. And I miss you guys. Yeah. So anyway, it is Sunday. It's just gone past 6 in the morning. The peanut's got up. She's got her iPad in hand. She's watching, I don't know what. It's not porn or anything, so I'll call that a win. And here I am. So, the games that were, last couple of weeks, I didn't play a lot of games, but they were good games. A couple of weeks back, I got a 3-player game with Super Trooper and Dustin of Scarface 1920. So if you listened, I think last episode, I had played a 2-player game of Scarface with Super Trooper. Really enjoyed it. I love mobster shit, right? I love Prohibition era stuff. I cannot freaking wait for Speakeasy from Vitel Lacerda to arrive. Boardwalk Empire is one of my favorite shows of all time. Al Capone stuff. I love it. I love that gritty Tommy gun, gangster mobster stuff. Love it. Scarface 1920 is a really good game. I won't go so far as to say it's awesome. That might seem like a small thing. I'm Canadian. I'm Gen X. So awesome is, your absolute S tier stuff. Hang on. Caffeine. Oh, thank you. I normally edit those out, but I think I'm just going to leave them in. You guys need to know I'm suffering. Hashtag not suffering. And so Scarface 1920. It is a really, really good game. You've got a map of Chicago. You've got a number of factions that you're playing with. Turns are really straightforward, and yet the decision space is quite meaty because your turns have offsets of you're either sending your workers, and it's a worker placement game. Sort of. It's more area majority, but the area you're sending them to is dictated by the action you're taking. So rather than you're placing a worker to take a specific action, taking one in a cluster of actions makes you place a worker in a number of places. It doesn't block it out, but it certainly does create more challenging decisions. So I suppose it's less worker placement, more area majority. I said I would be coherent. Maybe I lied. This second coffee is only just getting started. So I might have to pause this, get a third coffee before the end of this episode so that I'm making sense. So Scarface, it's got a great table presence. The board is monstrous. And it's not that the board is monstrous, but you also have your player boards, your little privacy shields. You've got your token trays. You've got all kinds of stuff. And so a 3-player game. I have a massive board game table. I don't even know. I think it's almost 220 centimeters, so it's like 7 feet by 3.5 feet. It's monstrous. I have a monstrous board game table. Scarface 1920 pretty much fills the table. We could put a 4th player in because we're only in 3 of the 4 sections. But I can imagine Scarface 1920 on a quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes here with my fingers, normal table would be a bit of a challenge to play because it is a table hog. And if I'm being honest, it probably doesn't need to be. You could probably make that main board 20% smaller without too many issues. That said, we haven't played at 4-player. So I don't know how crowded it will get at 4 players. It was still a little Cold War-y, if I'm being honest, at 3 players. So just to put in perspective, I won't do a full rehash, but in Scarface, you're starting off in one of the boroughs or neighborhoods, and you've got a little space that is ostensibly, it's a farm. It's a resource. It's a resource converter. Whatever your space is, whatever your little borough is, and it will convert, let's say, 6 barrels of whiskey into money. Everything's into money. Money's points, right? So wherever you start, you're picking a little borough, and they're randomly seated with these little resource converter tiles, which ostensibly look like a little neighborhood. And each one of them will convert a number of resources, those being guns and whiskey, which are the 2 main resources, into money, and money are points. And you also have to spend money, but money are points at the end of the game. And so at the start of the game, you're drafting where you want to start, and you go from there. And you can build up your borough with different things, brothels and casinos and bars, whatever the case is. There's also nightclubs. I don't know if it's bars. It's casinos, brothels, and something. I can't recall. Anyway, more coffee. And the more stuff you have in there, the more money it will earn during the income phase, and also the more attractive it is to all the other assholes around the table who want to come and take your shit, because this is mobster era stuff. And so the board's quite sprawling, and at 3 players, even still, it was a bit of, I won't say turtling, but you are kind of just consolidating and growing your little corner while trying to make sure that it's not too attractive and also not unguarded, because the more presence you have, the more dudes you have standing around with Tommy guns up their sleeves waiting to fuck up people who come in your area, the harder it is for people to make the decision to come in. And so I find Scarface 1920 is a really great bit of game. it is a little Cold War-y. It has a little bit of that Voidfall feel in that you will go in and bash up your neighbor a little bit, but it's not the whole game. But I'll tell you what, this is fuck you the game though, right? Scarface 1920 is 100% fuck you the game, because you have a number of cards up your sleeve, that you can play, like the people you hire, the jobs that you can take on, which give you little superpowers. They allow you to absolutely screw your neighbors. Like, for example, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the guys at the table, Super Trooper Dustin. They had this card where if one of your neighbors runs a job or runs a conversion, for example, does a sale. I think it's called doing a sale, where you're selling guns and whiskey for money. You just get to take the proceeds, and they can do nothing about it. And so I'd run this huge, I saved like, whoo, I was running this conversion, and I was going to get $38. Now, $38, I think an end game score in this is about 150 or so, 180. So 30, that's like 20%, could be 25% of your end game score. I'm like, yeah, fuck you guys. Here we go. Woo, $38. And one of the other guys goes, yeah, I'll take that. I'm like, you bitch. You fucking bitch. But it's the whole game, right? So it's like, because 2 minutes later, you're doing it to someone else. I'm not a massive fan of take that in a game, except, as it turns out, when the whole game is take that. The whole game is just take that. Because also, there's like Uno reverse cards in this, where somebody's like, yeah, I'm going to take that. And you're like, yeah, you think so? Well, I'm going to play this card. And all of a sudden, all your dudes are going to jail or some shit. Look, I'm plucking it out of the air. I'm just giving you random examples of what might be happening. But Scarface 1920 is literally fuck you the game. It is an absolute blast. Is it deeply strategic? Not really. It's wildly tactical, though. And one of the things I like about that is when you're playing with Dustin, a wildly tactical game makes the game flow. Because as much as, he wants to plan out his next 5 turns, he just can't. Like, there's just no hope. You can plan out your next turn, right? You can go, well, I'm going to do this next turn. But by the time you get to your next turn, the stuff that you wanted to sell is gone because somebody swept in and they've stolen it all, or they've sent your dudes to jail, is it loads of fun? Is it top 10? No. Is it top 20? No. Will I play it any time? You bet your ass. You bet your ass I'll play Scarface 1920 anytime, because it is so much fun. I'm pretty sure I lost that by 10,000 points again. I can't remember. I don't even care. Right? I don't even care who won, because it was a blast. It was a long game. It was long. I want to say it was probably 4.5 hours. And normally I go, well, that's Dustin's fault. But it's not. It's not in this one, because even his turns were quite quick. I just think the game is long at 3. That said, it didn't feel long. It was like we finished the game, we looked up and like, wow, that was like 4.5 hours. But it's not one of those games where I was at the last sort of 30% of the game going, oh, can we hustle this along, people? Because I really would like to, I don't know, do something else with my life with the rest of the day. And by something else, I mean play another game. I don't want to be at a different table. But Scarface 1920, that's by, I'm going to butcher this name, Tony Tony It's Sarah Desenfirm. Tony Sarah Desenfirm, Daniel Simon, art by Antonio Stepperts, and published by Redzin Games. Will play 100% any day of the week. And we didn't have time for another. This is normally we get together on a Games Day Friday, whatever. It's Euros, but because Scarface 1920 was such a long game, Dustin and Super Trooper and I have been limping our way, and I say limping because we're not very good at the game sometimes. We've been limping our way through the crew, the quest for something. The crew, it's the space crew, not the water crew. The crew for the quest for Deep Space Nine, that's not it. The quest for, I don't know, I'd have to look it up. Anyway, we've been working our way through the crew for 35 years. And I think we crossed the halfway point finally. And so we played about, I want to say 25 rounds of the crew. And the crew's a cooperative trick-taking game. If you haven't played the crew, you basically have, 4 suits of cards, 4 colors of cards, ostensibly numbered 1 through 9. And then you've got 4 trump cards, 1 to 4, which are black. and the crew, you'll pull a scenario. Well, you're not pulling a scenario, you're playing an order. It'll say, okay, so you have to win these 3 tricks in this order. So you've got to win the red 9, the blue 2, and the green 5 in that order. And somebody specifically has to win the trick. Look, I'm not doing it justice. Go look up the crew. The crew is a blast. The crew is an absolute blast. So anyway, we were playing the crew, and sometimes we do a scenario 5 times before we win it. I think our record for shit is 7 times. I think there was one scenario back in the early 20s, because it's 50 scenarios long. In the early 20s, we played one scenario 7 or 8 times before we managed to hard bash our way through it. We played at least, I want to say, 25 hands of the crew. And a hand of the crew, don't get me wrong, a hand of the crew could be 2 minutes. Because if you fuck something up, it's like, well, I played that card, you shouldn't play that card, because we can't play that card yet, it's game over. And we actually got to the point, I think, where our brains were just crew fried. Where, and you can't talk. You can't go, hey, I've got the blue 2, guys. By the way, I've got the blue 2, so nobody play this because I've got the blue. You can't. You can indicate through silent communication. You can put something down that vaguely indicates what you have in your hand. It's delightful. But there were a number of hands of the crew we played where we had to, for example, win the blue 2 last. And we looked down at the end of the game. No one had any cards, and we couldn't find the blue 2. And it's like, oh, yeah, that got thrown into one of the first tricks of the game because we were all crew fried. And we didn't even notice. And so it got to the point where the last 2 or 3 hands were like, okay, do not play the blue 2. Do not. Does anybody... We're playing a trick now. We cannot... Because you can talk about what you can and can't do. You can't talk about what's in your hand. But, it was hilarious. We'd be playing a card, and we'd look around the table and go, do not play the blue 2. Anyway, we limped through it. When I say limped, we limped through the last couple of sessions for the day. Love the crew. I think we're up close to 30 of the 50. Be another 7 or 8 years before we finish. Don't even care. It's fun. It's a great little thing to throw in at the end or in between other games. Loving the crew. Crew's by Thomas Singh, art by Marco Armbruster, and published by Cosmos. Go play the crew. So I only really got one more game in other than the big one. We're going to talk about the big one. And one of the games I played with the Peanut last week was Clank in Space. Now, I mentioned a Project L 3 or 4 weeks ago because there's a new Clank crowdfunding campaign coming out soon, which is an expansion for Clank Catacombs, which looks great. And I'd mentioned that I might be looking to pick that up because I think the Peanut would really like Clank. And so, Project L said, well, I've got I've got a Clank game. You want to borrow a Clank game? I'm like, yeah, I want to borrow a Clank game. Hit me. So she had one of her Spawn drop-off, Clank in Space. So Clank in Space. So Clank, if you haven't played Clank, Clank's a deck builder race game. It's basically the Quest for El Dorado, but with aliens or dragons, or depending on what your flavor of Clank is, because you've got regular Clank, which is like Dungeons and Wizards, and Clank in Space, which is like aliens and airlocks and shit. And so depending on what your flavor is, you've got a few choices. And so basically you've got a market of cards, and on your turn, and you've got this board which is randomly sort of put together in parts. Some of it's set, some of it's random, and you've got all these parts, and they slip in, and the art's great, the board's great, the iconography is fantastic in Clank. And so in Clank, you start off with 10 cards in your hand, you shuffle them up, you draw 5, and on your turn you're playing 5. And ostensibly, it's kind of like Quest for El Dorado or Dominion, where you play a card, and then you do the card, then you play the next, then you do the next, you play the next, you do the next one. In reality, you can drop all 5 cards. You can just drop them and go, this is what I'm doing with these cards, because resources that are generated on the card stack. So on the cards you will have little boots, which are movement. You will have blue diamonds, which are purchase. And you will have red swords, which are attack. And those are the things. So the only meaningful difference is some of the cards will say, add a clank, remove a clank, wipe something from the market, that sort of stuff. Right? But realistically, you can just drop all 5 cards, go, this is what I'm playing, and this is how I'm using them, because you play your 5 cards, and you go, out of these 5 cards, I have 5 boots, 2 swords, and 7 blue diamonds. Sounds like a bowl of Lucky Charms cereal. And this is what I'm doing with them. And that's how we played with the Peanut, because we played open-handed, because she is 10. And so you play your cards, you play your 5 cards, and you go, well, I've got 4 boots, And so I'm going to take my meeple on the board and I'm going to move them 4. And so 4, your meeple's in a space on the board, and to get to the next space might be 1 boot or it might be 2 boots. Much like if you're in Quest for El Dorado, you might need 2 coins, or you might need 2 swords to get through, not swords, they're machetes to get through 2 little bushes. You've got to pay whatever it is to get to the next one. But unlike in Quest for El Dorado, it's not, well, I've got a card that has 3 foot. It's only 2 foot to get here. Well, I'm losing that 1 foot, right? I'm pretty sure that's how it works in Quest for El Dorado. If you play one that's got, 3 machetes and it takes you 2 machetes to get to a space. Oh, maybe you can. Maybe you can use it over. I don't know. It's early. I haven't played Quest in a while. Last time I played Quest, it was like the Uber Quest game that Super Turbo set up that took us 97 hours to play. Loved it, but it was a long time. So you got your 5 boots, and it'll say, well, to get to the next one, you need 2 boots. So it's 2 boots, great, to get to the next one. And the next one might, instead of 2 boots, it might have 2 monsters. Whatever it is, aliens or dragons, whatever it is. So you not only need the 2 boots, but you need to have 2 swords in your play as well. Because if you don't, you're going to take 2 damage. You've got a damage track on the board, and if your damage track fills, your game is over. So to get to the next one, you've got to have 2 boots to get to the next one, and 2 swords. Or 1 sword or no sword. If you have no swords and you really want to get there, you take the 2 move, you take the 2 damage. There's ways to heal, but not many. And so you're moving around the board, and there's different things you have to do. For example, in Clank in Space, we had to hack the mainframe. And hacking the mainframe is as simple as we had to walk into a certain space and drop one of our cubes. You have 2 cubes, and you drop it in a little box that's in that space. And in that box is either a benefit or a penalty. So the benefit might be you get $5. The penalty might be you take a damage. The penalty might be you drop a clank, and we'll get to clank in a second. And why would you take a penalty? Because those boxes are way easier to get to. Because in Clank in Space, you've got to get all the way to the other end of the board. You've got to steal an artifact, because Clank's about being a thief. You got to steal shit and get out. And you can't get to the other end of the board until you drop 2 of these cubes in 2 different spaces on the board. So you might go, well, I'm going to take a clank, or I'm going to take a damage because it's really easy to get to this one, and then I can move on and zip over. Because in Clank, you could meaningfully just go zip, zip, and screw your opponents over. Because there's not penalties, but there's costs if you're stuck in there when someone else gets out. So anyway, Peanut's playing. She's having a great time. She's playing her 5 cards. You've got to buy more cards for the market. You've got to trash cards. And trashing cards, I think, is a really tough concept for little kids. It's like, well, why would I throw this card away? It does this. But gaining an understanding of, well, some of these cards are way better than others. And if I have these cards that aren't great, because you start with 2 cards that aren't good. They do bad things. And she very clearly understood that the first time she had an opportunity to trash, she was like, well, I want to get rid of this because this card is garbage. And once those cards were gone, it was like, well, she's like, Dad, why would I get rid of another card? I'm like, well, because you've got 15 cards in there. And you've got some cards that are really good. And if you have these cards that are kind of meh, they slow you down. And she's like, oh, so this is the one I would get rid of. I'm like, yeah, that's the one you would get rid of. So she's like, great, gone. Screw you, card. She just loved Clank. And Clank was 2.5 hours. Now, I'm not saying Clank is a 2.5 hour game. But with an initial teach and a first playthrough, and I'd never played Clank, so I was going in cold, so there's a little bit of, what do we do with this? It was 2.5 hours. Now, granted, the last 10 minutes of the game, she was a bit of a, whoa, how much longer is this going to go? Largely because she could see the finish line. And when you get towards the end of Clank, you can kind of see the last couple of turns, you kind of can game them and go, well, it's going to be this and this and this, and it's done. Because you're racing for the exit. But she lasted 2.5 hours. And then we did the score. She cleaned my clock, and she cleaned my clock fairly, right? Like, I didn't really help her with any of her major decisions. She cleaned my clock, and it was great. So, Peanut aside, in Clank, what you have is you have little cubes, and if you make noise, if one of your cards says clank, as in you've made a noise, you drop a cube into the little clank pool. And then at certain points in the game, all these cubes go into the draw bag. There's another event that happens that causes you to draw cubes out of the bag. Now, there are some black cubes, which are kind of neutral. And so, depending on where you are on the bad guy track, it'll say draw 3 cubes. And the further up you go on the bad guy track, the more cubes you have to draw every time you have to draw cubes. So you draw out of the bag, there are 2 black cubes. There's one of the Peanuts cubes and one of my cubes. Well, the peanuts cubes and my cubes, they count as damage. Boom, they go on your damage track. The black cubes go out of the game. So there's a finite amount of black cubes in there. So as if you're mathing this out, as you're drawing out, we keep putting cubes in, the black cubes keep getting drawn out, it escalates, so there's more and more damage for the players as you're drawing. The one house rule we played, just for our first game, was we threw the black cubes back in the bag, right? Just because I didn't want to play a first game of Clank, get disemboweled, and go, well, I'm never playing that shit again. And I think it was a good move, because I think playing a second time, she's going to absolutely nail this whole card market, buying cards, trashing cards, how do I move, all of that's done. And coping with the escalation, I think she will be fine. 2.5 hours she played, and we got to the end, and she said, Dad, I will play that anytime. And so big thanks to Project L for loaning me Clank. We loved Clank. Hot take, I think Clank is better than Quest for El Dorado as a game. Not that I would not play Quest for El Dorado. I think Quest for El Dorado is fantastic. I just think in Clank there's a little more, I'll call it implied narrative in the theming. You know, you're moving around. The cards have a little more flavor on them. The cards have a little more to do. One of the other things you can do with the cards that I didn't touch on is if you have swords on your cards, and if there's an enemy in the market, because the market has all sorts of different cards in it, you can use the swords to kill an enemy in the market, and you get the benefit off that enemy. So it might say, kill this enemy, heal 1 health, or kill this enemy, remove 2 Clank from the Clank pool. And those are things you definitely want to be doing. Now, Clank Catacombs is a little different in that you have a stack of tiles that kind of emerge as you're exploring the dungeon. I will say, hand on heart, we will own Clank Catacombs at some point this year, because I think the Peanut loved Clank. I love Clank. I think the Fox would love Clank. I think throwing it on the table, and I think it's going to be a blast. Clank Underworld comes out on crowdfunding into this year. I can say just on one game of Clank, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a blast. And the fact that it held the Peanut's attention for 2.5 hours, and she was like, yeah. She was like, we'll play this tomorrow. I'm like, we didn't play it tomorrow, but we could have. So it's Sunday. We got some shit to do today. But I'm going to suggest we put Clank on the table this afternoon for our Sunday family game and see if I can get the Fox to play and see how the Peanut goes for the second game. Well, I'll let you know. Loved Clank. Loved. That's by Paul Denon. Art by Rafe Beisner, Rostislav, Paul Ramos, Nate Storm, Franz Volwinkle. Excuse me. And published by Direwolf. Clank was a blast. And the only other game I played, and I'll say the only other game, because man oh man. Yesterday, Super Trooper and I finished Aeon Trespass Odyssey Cycle 1. We played, when did we start? We sat at the table, it was just about 9. He went home with Beelzebubbles at, it was about 9. So granted, we broke for lunch, we broke for dinner. We also played the full epilogue and did a reset for Cycle 2. So it was a 12-hour day. It was fantastic. It was, and I'm, voices in my head today, we're going to talk about the cathartic joy of an ending. I'm not going to do any spoilers today, but it was outstanding. I loved, I'll say, almost every minute. I'll go as far as say I loved every minute. Even the fact that we had a hard fail after about 25 hours first run through and had to do a hard reset, which I wasn't shitty about, but I was like, ugh. This game offers, I won't even say enough of a boost. It's not a boost. But when you hard reset in Aeon Trespass, some of the things you've achieved stay. And so you get to build on those on your second playthrough. And again, I'm not going into spoilers here, but the fact that we got to build on those meant that we were in such a spectacular place from the evolution of our characters for the final battle. It was so good. It was so good. So I'm not, again, no spoilers on that. But ATO, we finished Cycle 1. That's Cycle 1 of 5. I think I looked back and we did 10 sessions. Our average sessions are between 9 and 12 hours. So you can math that out. Let's take the average. It was between 100 and 120 hours to do Cycle 1. It was about 8 months. I think the reset we started in January. I think we did it the second time through. And I didn't track what we were actually playing, just our plays. I think we did the cycle in 6 sessions for our second playthrough, and I may have that wrong, but let's say it was 6 sessions at 10 to 12 hours each. But we did blast through the first 30% because we'd already played it, and we knew what we were doing to sort of smash through that. Great, fantastic, can't wait to play more. That's the games that were. Oh, welcome to FOMOMOFO, where I take you through my personal, angst-ridden journey of capitalist acquisitionism. As always, this is not an exhaustive list of crowdfunding projects, but merely those that have my personal intention, either because they are by a design and development team I like, a theme I enjoy, or because they have pretty toys. Sometimes it's all three. So there's not a lot in FOMOMOFO this week, not because there isn't a lot out there. There's a ton out there. There's something like 18 games launched last week. There's just not a lot on my radar. So I'm going to kick off with... and I'm going to be blunt, I don't know a lot about the game, I just love the way it looks. And this is Endeavor Deep Sea. So Endeavor Deep Sea was crowdfunded a couple years ago. It's got a really interesting interplay. It's not so multiplayer solitary, but a little, because you're building your own tableau of capabilities and exploration, and you're trying to get down to the bottom of the ocean to explore. It's got a really nice sort of modern environmentalist feel, and then there's boards, and tracks, and it looks great. And I don't know if I'd look at this and want it because it's FOMO or because it's actually a good game. So I am looking very closely at this one. Endeavor Deep Sea, again, it's one that I very nearly pulled the pin. Pulled the trigger, not pulled the pin. Pull the pin sounds really desperate. Or, it's not a grenade. I very nearly pulled the trigger on it last year on an aftermarket retail copy because the deluxe version looks awesome. Project L has Endeavor, I think, so I might hit her up for her copy and see how that plays. But it looks really fun. It looks really, like, the look of it's great, the aesthetic's great, the art's great, and there's an expansion. Of course there's an expansion, right? Because it's coming back to crowdfunding. There's an expansion. Who doesn't like an expansion with stuff, deluxe stuff, and dual layer boards and all kinds of blah, 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 blah. And again, Endeavor Deep Sea, I like the way it looks. I don't know a ton about it, but I'm going to learn over the next week or so. Because I think the deluxe version, if you want it all, the deluxe version, the expansion, all the bits and pieces that go with it, I think it's 185 Australian. Now, I know some of you are overseas, I think, in Merca, like a good game's like $60, so you might go 185. That's probably only $35 American. I mean, it's not. We're not dealing in pesos over here, but it's pretty fucking close some days. 185 Australian, for those of you that are outside Australia, excuse me, hang on. 185 Australian is kind of about what you pay for a top tier game in 2025. And I'm not talking about retail stuff. If you want to go get mainstream retail stuff that's at the game store, you take it to rides and whatever else, they're like $60-$70. If you want to go get a Pandemic, they're like $70. But if you want this stuff that's top shelf, it's top tier production, it's top tier, all this sort of stuff. I mean, if I'm going to get this in retail later, I think Endeavor Deep Sea, the not deluxe version, you can get it in retail right now. I think it's $110 Australian. So 185, it's not that big a deal for top tier games in Australia. So I think for what you're getting, it's the full game and the expansion, that looks pretty good. Shipping's $38, which is just a hair over 20%. I like to look at shipping as a percentage of the cost of the game overall when I'm making my decisions, because that's not just my decision on whether to buy the game, but kind of on like my decision whether to buy it crowdfunding or retail. Because often in retail, I can get the same game, and even with the retail markup on it, it can be less than the shipping, right? And we're going to talk about that with the next one. So that's Endeavor Deep Sea. It's on Kickstarter. If you like Endeavor Deep Sea, well, there's an expansion for it. It's got a co-op version. As I said, I think Project L has Endeavor, maybe. We were talking the other day, and she mentioned it. So maybe I'll hit her up for a copy, and when I return Clank, and give it a go. Endeavor Deep Sea. God, I'm all froggy today. Oof. Up next, Assyria. Assyria is out by Garfield Games, designed by my favorite law firm of Phillips and McDonald, with the addition of Emmanuel Ornella. And now, Assyria is a remake of a game that was, I want to say 2009. It's from the Brown era. And they've updated the gameplay. They've tweaked it slightly. The board's got a refresh. And Assyria, like, I really like the looks of Assyria. Not the country. I'm sure Assyria is beautiful. One of my good friends, and shout out to you, Chef Mike. I know, I think, Assyria's, it's a beautiful country. That's not what I'm talking about when I say I like the looks of Assyria. But I think that it looks like a really cool game. It's very interesting. And it's got this interesting mechanic in that you're building up ziggurats in areas that you claim. And the ziggurats next to the rivers will end up getting washed away by floods. So it kind of does a board reset partway through. And look, I don't have enough details beyond that. I've watched a couple of videos and I stopped largely because, and we'll get to that, because of the shipping cost on this game. It still looks very brown, but I think it looks great. I think for a 2009 game, I think with the few tweaks, with the refresh on the board, I think it looks like it's got a lot more longevity. It kind of looks like a Garfield game when you look at the box. It's fitting into that kind of, and I don't mean the art style, but I mean it's got that kind of Scarabray anarchy, lots of beige. We love beige and wooden pieces. Assyria, as a game, I think it's, and here I've got my notes. One second. It's $74 Australian, right? That is like woefully reasonable. Right, it's $74 Australian. To be honest, if I played it twice, I would call that time well spent, because $74 Australian, you get 3 or 4 people at the table. It's a $35 experience divided by 4. It's $7 each. Like, you can't have lunch for $7 each. You can't go to a movie for $7 each. You can't, and that's kind of how I look at this stuff sometimes. Sorry, coffee. It's $30 shipping. Now, okay. It's $30 shipping, which puts the whole cost of the game at $104 delivered to my door, which in 2025 is cheap as shit. Like, I'm not lying. Like, I'm not making this stuff up. $104 for a brand new board game delivered to your door is really reasonable. And part of that's because Garfield Games is a New Zealand company. Getting stuff from New Zealand to Australia, which I think it goes through New Zealand for us, is pretty cheap. And so shipping's, the cost of the games rather are not overly expensive, because their campaigns always run in New Zealand dollars, and the New Zealand dollar is a little bit lower than the Australian dollar, so it goes quite far. My issue is paying almost 50% shipping for a game. And I know that seems, you might go, Hamas, it's $104. You just told me $185 is perfectly reasonable. Yes, it is. $185 is perfectly reasonable for what I'm calling top tier games. Now, I'm not saying Garfield doesn't make top tier games. They make top tier games from a gameplay perspective. Scholars of the South Tigris is one of my favorite games. I love it. I love the colored dice. I love the blending. I love the sandboxy way you can make your own way through that. Oh, super true. We've got to play Scholars again soon. Some of the games are outstanding, right? I'm talking about $185 for something like an Eagle Griffin game, right? Or Galactic Cruise, or one of these games where the production really meets. You're paying for production, and now yes, you're paying for gameplay, you're paying for the game design and the development, and whatnot. But when I say top tier games, I'm talking about the games that you pull out and you just on the table. They're just showstoppers. $185 is perfectly reasonable for that. Now, Assyria will probably retail for $105 when it gets here, right? So I'm not looking at saving any money, but what it means is I'm also not missing out on anything, because one of the things that Garfield tends to do is they have exclusives on their Kickstarters, which are usually exist as things like a set of promo cards, a very small set of promo cards or something. It's not like if I don't buy it now, I'm missing out on the metal ziggurats. They don't do that. It's not their thing, which I absolutely love, because it means that if you can't afford to buy the game today, you're going to be able to get it in 6 months, and you're going to be able to get it. They don't play the FOMO game. They don't, and they're very clear about that. Shem's very, very vocal about, we don't play FOMO. They don't even do a pledge manager. They're like, if you want it, you got 3 weeks to order it. Here it is. There's no pledge manager, because we're not here to go, oh, you're going to miss out. That's not what they do. And I really love that. But it also means that I can wait, and if the reviews come out and Assyria is like, oh, Assyria is one of the top games of the year, I'm like, well, I can pick it up at retail, and I'm not missing out on, this is FOMOMOFO. After all, there's nothing to miss out on by not buying it now. More coffee, hang on. If you've been keeping up, I paused the game. Pause the game? It's not a game. Well, life's a game. I paused the podcast, got a third coffee. It's not quite cocaine, but you can hear I'm speaking a little faster now because I've woken up. The caffeine's coursing through my blood. It's tricking my brain into thinking I'm not tired, and we're all good. So Assyria, it's $104 Australian to pick up. The other thing that's really nice about Garfield games is they do very short runs. They usually go to crowdfunding when they're almost ready to print. So I think it's coming out by the end of the year. Shipping lanes dependent. And it looks like a fun midweight Euro. If you like Assyria, there's more Assyria. All right, let's talk about Isofarian Guard. Oof. Okay, so Isofarian Guard is a massive campaign game. It's one of these great big beasts. It comes in this huge crate. It's got chips and bits and more bits and hundreds and like 1,200 cards or something. It's out with a reprint and an expansion. The expansion is called Veilward, I think, which, to be honest, it looks great. I think Rolling Solo called it their solo game of the year 2023. You know, if you've been listening, Clappers, I do love playing with myself. It's one of those things that if I did go into this, it would be for a solo experience. Here's where I'm at. Isofarian Guard, rated highly for solo. It's a huge campaign, massive lore. It's a big 200-hour rabbit hole. The all-in is about $750 Australian. Now you go, $750 Australian. Oh. But here's the thing, like $750 Australian for 200 hours. You're talking about what's that? $3.20 an hour for entertainment. If you're entertained the whole time. So if you play a game and you're like, yep, I'm going to play this conclusion. I love the shit out of this. It's not expensive, right? $750 Australian. Now, okay, you're going to go, dude, you're mad as a fucking hatter if you tell me $750 isn't expensive. Like, okay, so if that was 8 games, different games in your collection, and each of those games you played 5 times, maybe more, it's the same amount of entertainment. It's just more to pay now. That's the thing. It's like $750, and that's everything. That's the basic, the reprint. That's the expansion. That's all the bells and whistles, all the pretty stuff, all the, like, I think you can probably get the gameplay for a lot less than that. If you want gameplay all in, it's significantly less than that. But if you want everything, if you're like, well, I want it, my precious, I want it on the table, it's $750 Australian. One of the things that I will absolutely hand them is they're doing flat fee worldwide shipping for $80. So the more you spend, the lower. I mean, we're talking about that's like what, 12%? Does 12% shipping if on the all in? They're offering flat fee worldwide shipping for $50 US. So here's where I'm at with Isofarian Guard. I don't know. Hang on. I just need more drugs. One second. So Isofarian Guard is so highly rated for solo play. It does get labeled as a little grindy. And so I need to have an understanding of what that grind looks like. Because in my queue of games that are coming, I have Lands of Evershade, which looks phenomenal. And I went all in for Lands of Evershade. So all the chapters, all the bits and pieces, there's hundreds of hours in there. I went all in for Enormity, which looks phenomenal. Aeon Trespass in Space with aliens. Yes. That said, Isofarian Guard is one of those games that if you want to buy it aftermarket, it's twice the price. If I want to play Isofarian Guard in 3 years' time, getting it now is the best way to get it. So I will be going down the rabbit hole. I will come back to you on my thoughts on this. I'll be going down the rabbit hole of gameplay videos, making a decision as to what I want to do with this, because I am firmly on the fence. I have splinters in my ass. I am on the fence on this one, and I need to watch some extensive gameplay videos like I did for Dawn of Madness. Dawn of Madness was a big investment. The campaign's about to finish, and Dawn of Madness was a big investment. I did 12, 15 hours of videos and gameplay, and not so much listening to reviews, but watching the gameplay, like watching a 3-hour gameplay video. It's probably more than 15 hours, because I wanted to be able to say to myself, I can see myself actually playing this game. because playing it solo, and we talked about Dawn of Madness, I think, last episode, because it was very topical. It's on crowdfunding. They say a game of Dawn of Madness is 10 hours. I call bullshit. I think if I'm playing solo, it's 6 hours, because there's no conversation back and forth. Now, if it is 10 hours and I'm playing with Super Trooper, that's fine, because we'll play Arkham Horror, and Arkham Horror is 10, 12 hours with no issues. Blah, blah, blah. No issues. No issues. But I need to watch some videos on Ice Vanguard to see if because sometimes the grind is painful. You know, and ISS Vanguard was a triumph of a game, but there was a section in the middle that was a grind. And I remember playing ISS Vanguard, and I got to about session 16, 17, and I had a little bit of fatigue, and I punched through it, and I'm so glad I did, but it was, I think, 3 sessions that just felt too rinse and repeat for my liking. So I'm going to have to watch some videos and make a decision. Watch this space. You know, as I said, Ice Vanguard, there's a couple hundred hours in there, easy. It looks great. And, you know, if you're looking on, solo game ratings, it rates very, very highly. So watch this space. And then lastly in FOMOMOFO today, just an update on the Agricola, the Unnecessary Edition, which would sit nicely on the shelf next to my Castles of Burgundy, the Unnecessary Edition, or next to Project L's incoming Puerto Rico, the Unnecessary Edition. Project L also loaned me her brown copy of Agricola. So it's sitting on the shelf behind me. I've opened the box 3 times. I've read the rules. I've set it up twice. I haven't yet played it. I've watched some gameplay videos, and, the fox like, yeah, I'll play it. Because I said to her, look, I want to play this game with you because I want to decide if I want to get the pretty version. And she's like, yeah, I'll play it. I don't know if I can be fucked. I know it's a highly rated game, but I've pulled it out 3 times. I've read the rules. I've set it up. And it's like, do I want to farm? If we don't play Clank, we're going to play Agricola today. And watch this space. As I said, OMC is not a review podcast. It's just a glimpse into the life and mania of one middle-aged man coping with an addiction for cardboard and plastic. So maybe we'll get Agricola to the table. Maybe we'll get Agricola to the table, and I'll get to the end and I'll go, man, that was just a bomb, Agricola. I don't think so, but maybe. And I'm not shitting on Agricola. If Agricola is your yum, man, high five. I got some yums in this room that there's some games in here that I just think are the absolute tits. And I know they're not everyone's cup of tea. So, look, I'm going to try to get Agricola to the table. Maybe tonight, definitely this week, so I can return it to Project L and go, thank you, that was amazing, or thank you, I never need to see it again, or thank you, I will play if you like, but maybe we can play this instead. So, at this stage, I will not be backing Agricola, the Unnecessary Edition, but hey, maybe I'll play and change my mind. I don't think so. Which means I will have money in my board game budget for Agricola Zombies maybe next year. Who knows? I can't see anything about the gameplay about that. If that's farming zombies, building a building a pen in the field and trapping zombies so they can breed for more zombies. Who knows? That concludes this week's FOMOMOFO. This week in Voices in My Head, you'll note we skipped straight past incoming because there is nothing incoming this week. It's winter in Australia. It was literally 2 degrees the other day. I walked out of the house and everything shrank. It was 2 degrees. Postman Pete, I think he's in hibernation. He's sleeping in a cave somewhere. There's not much incoming. I've got pre-orders I'm waiting on. I've got all kinds of stuff that I've ordered, but there's nothing delivering. So we skip right through that. So this week in Voices in My Head, I want to talk about the joy of the finish line. Because yesterday, Super Trooper and I finished Cycle 1 of ATO. Now, I say Cycle 1. We didn't finish ATO. Aeon Trespass is ostensibly broken into 5 lumps. I won't even call them chapters, because you can't call a chapter 110 hours of gameplay. But 5 cycles. And if you are playing ATO, and this will be spoiler free, guys. So if you're playing ATO and you're like, Hammers, you spoil something for ATO and I'm going to throat punch you, motherfucker. Don't worry, this is spoiler free. So ATOs is ostensibly broken into 5 cycles. Each one has a story arc, and the story arc for this one was fantastic. And we finished, and we got to the end last night, and we had a high five. Like, we were literally, there were some dice rolls in that last battle. We were cheering. We were absolutely like, you'd roll a die, we were going, yeah, fuck yeah! Like, just because it was, yeah. Loved every minute of Aeon Trespass Cycle 1. Super Trooper and I, we're actually going to do a bonus episode for those that are interested of the ATO Cycle 1 wrap. And we're going to talk about the experience. That will not be spoiler free. That will be full of spoilers. It will be clearly labeled as such. But we're going to talk about our ATO Cycle 1 experience because he's in the same boat as I am. We are fangirls of this big time. So the joy of the finish line. If you played campaign games, which some of you maybe haven't, but I think probably a large portion of you have. That could be Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, Oathsworn, Isis Vanguard, Tainted Grail, even stuff like Legacy of You, which are small, lighter campaigns. You know, there are pretend campaigns that come with games like Revive, which have like little 8 and 9 game campaigns which reveal parts of the game. Arcs the Blighted Reach, you know, I wouldn't necessarily call that a campaign game, but it kind of is. It's a 3-chapter game. One of the things that I find is so nourishing when I'm playing a campaign is the pacing. The pacing of the game is, and we just touched on this a few minutes ago with the ISS Vanguard pacing, and that I felt that there was a little bit of a grind in the middle, and I pushed through, and I'm glad I did. But there were probably 6 or 8 hours of gameplay there that they weren't to punish, but they certainly weren't as enjoyable as the rest of the game. One of the things I appreciate with a campaign is when the pacing is absolutely spot on. So Super Trooper and I started ATO last year. We put it on the table. We both read the 80-page rule book. We both watched Paul Grogan's 4 or 5 90-minute videos on how to play. I think we watched most of them twice. And we started. And I remember we set up our first battle, because you basically start up, you get through 3 or 4 days of preamble, and then you go into your first battle with Hecaton, who's this 1,000-armed behemoth. And we got just fucking destroyed, right? Turn 3, like, we're just bloody pulpy messes on the table. And we looked at each other like, are we playing this game right? Like, that was, and we, yep, okay. So there's a thing in the game called a Sisyphus tier. You get given one when you start. You can take the Sisyphus tier and you can replay a battle. And we're like, do we take the Sisyphus tier? And we looked at each other and went, well, no, because we just started the game. So we'll just hard restart, because we hadn't done anything yet. So we hard restarted. We got to the battle again, and we won the battle. And we're like, aha, okay, got it. But we're looking at the bad guy card, the enemy card for Hecaton, which has 4 levels of bad guy, or 8 levels, I think, on the backside. And we're like, how are we supposed to, like, we just scraped through this battle. How are we ever supposed to win on a level 4 battle? Because you look at level 4 as a bit of a heads up, and you're like, what does this shit even mean? What do you mean? What do you mean if he pushes me off the edge of the board, I'm dead? What does that mean? What? What? So, hang on, coffee. So anyway, we finished the battle. We started playing the game. And as you know, because I've talked about it a couple times, including today, we got to about our 3rd session, and our sessions are 9, 10, 11 hours, and we had a hard fail. There's a number of things that can happen. For example, if your ship hull drops to 0, you lose the game. If your crew on the ship drops to 0, you lose the game. If all your Argonauts die, you lose the game. I can't even remember. I think it was our ship hull got to 0. I think it's how we hard failed the first time. And we looked at each other and went, hard reset. And we did it. We did it again. But as I've said, we were able to zip through those first 3 sessions. I think we compressed into maybe 2, because we knew what we were doing and where we wanted to go and the decision we wanted to make, and we managed to get caught back up in about 20 hours, and then it was new game. I might have that wrong, I can't remember. But anyway, we got through it. And one of the things that Aeon Trespass does is the ramp up. So the ramp up in your capabilities, the ramp up in your gear that you can craft, it is so delightfully paced with the growth of these bad guys that you're beating up. In that, and I mentioned this 20 episodes ago when we first talked about ATO, and that I had a real anxiety about this game of how am I going to feel about sitting down and fighting the same monster 6 times, right? Like, is that going to get too rinse repeat? Is that going to feel grindy? And I'll tell you what, spoiler alert, no, it did not, because you're not fighting the same monster. Every time you fight it, it gets a little more powerful, and you're getting you got new challenges to get against. And every time you fight it, you've got a little more experience on how to deal with the shit that these guys are throwing at you. And there are 4 in Cycle 1. There's the Labyrinthaurus. Again, no spoilers here. I'm not going to talk about the battles themselves. There's Hecaton. There's the Hermesian Pursuer, which chases you around the board. And if it catches up to you, you've got to have a battle. And there's Alpha Temenos, which is the big bad wolf in the game. And so the pacing on ATO was excellent. There are some days, I think one day we played 7 primordial battles in the day. 7. Because the Hermesian Pursuer caught up, we got ambushed, and then we had a timeline battle, because every 6 or 7 days on the timeline you have a battle whether you want to or not. And then we finished a chapter, and at the end of a chapter you've got one of the big bad guys just rises over the hill and punches the living shit out of you. And I think it was 7. I think that's our biggest day. We had 7 primordial battles in one day. It was glorious. So the pacing is something that just sucks you in, right? Again, this is the joy of the finish line. This is what we're talking about, because some campaign games, I've gotten to the finish line and I've gone, oh, I made it. And some campaign games, I've got to the finish line, I'm like, fuck yeah! Last night, spoiler, it was fuck yeah. So, the other thing I want to talk about is it completionism that drives you? Or is it the game itself? Are you driven to finish just so you can finish? Right? And I have to say, for me, Jaws of the Lion was a bit that way. I didn't finish Jaws of the Lion. I was playing that with Lou. And Lou, I think, was 15 when we started Jaws of the Lion and had a lot more spare time. And by the time we got to scenario 21, she was kind of aging out and was like, I've kind of had enough of that, Dad. I'm like, okay, all right, fair enough. And so I put on the table, it was like scenario 21, and I was just going to play, two-handed or whatever to finish it off. And I put it down, I set it up. I'm like, the reason I've enjoyed Jaws of the Lion so much is not because Jaws of the Lion isn't a bad game. Jaws of the Lion is an excellent game. But my enjoyment for Jaws of the Lion came out of playing with Lou, not playing Jaws of the Lion itself. And that's not to say there wasn't tons to enjoy in Jaws of the Lion, right? It was excellent. I did, unfortunately, have Gloomhaven sat next to it on the bench, in the bunker, thinking, well, once we finish Jaws of the Lion, we'll play Gloomhaven together. And so I packed up Jaws of the Lion, I sold it, it was a really nice guy, came out, I reset it, he bought Jaws of the Lion, and then I'm like, well, maybe I'll start Gloomhaven. I opened Gloomhaven up, and I'm like, you know what, it's an outstanding game. But for me, the joy in Gloomhaven, just like the joy in Frosthaven, because I'm playing Frosthaven with the boys, occasionally I'm able to attend a Frosthaven session. The joy of Frosthaven isn't in the game. The game is great. But Frosthaven for me, it's very grindy, right? It's grindy. It's rinse repeat. So many campaigns are. But for me, if I go into a battle or a scenario in Frosthaven, it's a puzzle. The puzzle has very little to do with the story, other than you got the story tacked on, but it's basically a spatial puzzle. It's an efficiency management puzzle, and it's a great puzzle. But the joy I get out of those games is playing them with people I like. People I love. I'll say I love you guys. Yeah, I love you guys. It's 2025. We can do that, right? I'm a comfortable man. I'm Canadian. Playing with people I love. And that's the joy I get out of those games. And so for me, finishing Jaws of the Lion wasn't necessary, because I'd gotten to scenario 21. It's not that I didn't care, but I was like, the fun is getting Lou to the table. And Gloomhaven, I opened it up, I set it up, I went to start the first game of the first scenario Gloomhaven, and I went, you know what? This isn't a game I want to play alone. It's not. And so I packed it up and I sold it. And I was fine with that. Move on. So I guess some campaigns, if they haven't, excuse me, one second. Some campaigns for me, it's the completionism that drives, and I don't have a completionist, bone in me really. Like it's not when it comes to gameplay. And I'll give you another example. Elden Ring. I didn't finish Elden Ring. Elden Ring was a triumph of video gaming, right? I didn't finish Elden Ring, and I didn't feel the need because the point at which I stopped playing Elden Ring, I'd had enough Elden Ring. It was a great game. It was an amazing game. I think ostensibly I got to about the 80% mark and just went, you know what? I've enjoyed that. I've had enough. I don't feel the need to grind the last 20% just to say I have. And Jaws of the Lion was that for me. Gloomhaven, I didn't actually even start Gloomhaven, right? Because for me, it was just going to be that rinse, repeat grind without enough payoff. Now, fast forward Tainted Grail. Tainted Grail was actually the first big spend I ever made on crowdfunding when I first started playing board games with the boys. Tainted Grail came out, and I think I spent $270 or something. Like, oh my god, $270. This better be a good. And like, even after I paid for it, I'm like, do I get a refund? Like, am I gonna like this game enough? $270? Woo! And to be fair, this is Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin, not Fall of Avalon. Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin. I put it on the table, and it did not come off the table until I was done. The pacing on that game, it stayed on the table for 24 sessions straight. 24 sessions, it stayed there. It did not move until it was done. And when I finished, it was just this cathartic explosion of, yeah, because the narrative was so good and the gameplay was so good. I was driven to finish. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. I'm going to be perfectly honest. In Frosthaven, I love playing with the boys. I don't care what happens next. Part of that's because I've been drop in, drop out. But like the overarching plot and narrative on Frosthaven, I've never been sucked into it. I found the same with Jaws of the Lion. It's like, Jaws of the Lion, you're at the pub and now you got to go do this. Like, yeah, okay, great. That's what we're doing. Cool. It feels a bit like Too Many Bones in that way. It's like Too Many Bones. The narrative is there. It's kind of emergent. You have a bit of fun, blah, blah, blah. And it's great. Tainted Grail, I just absorbed in, like, if I could have skipped work for 2 weeks and just played and not slept and sat in the same pair of underpants, I probably would have. And so when it comes to campaigns, the joy of the finish line for me is not because the game's over, but I often talk about, on OMC about the shelf of firsts, right? I don't call it my shelf of shame or my shelf of opportunities, my shelf of firsts. On my shelf of firsts, I have things I get to experience for the first time. And I love that. And that finish line, you never get to experience it again. It's that first. So when I did the finish line Tainted Grail, it was amazing. The finish line last night, I won't say it was anticlimactic, but Super Trooper and I were like, we had a choice where we knew we were at the end of the campaign because it clearly says this is the point of no return if you choose this. We're like, whoa. And so we're like, do we do 3 more days of scouting around for resources and build another weapon? Do we, like, it's not there was anxiety, but it was like, we didn't know. Like, what are we facing? Do we? And in the end, it's not that it was anticlimactic, but because we had accomplished so much in the game, we had all these huge buffs, which were magnificent. And really, we walked in and the final battle of, the final battle person, no spoilers, the final battle bad guy, if you haven't played, no spoilers. And it's not that it was a cakewalk, but we beat the living shit out of it. Like, we just absolutely, it wasn't a walkover. It kind of was, but also it was a joy because every battle in Aeon Trespass is a limp. You're like, oh! And so we went into this last battle going, okay, we're prepared to do this 3 or 4 times. We had these Sisyphus tears. We could grip and reset the battle. We're prepared if that's what we have to do. And we walked in and we just went, dude, wang, suck that motherfucker. And it was so good. And we crossed that finish line and it was so good. And then we played the epilogue. And the epilogue is basically narrative only. It's a book you go through and you tell more stories. And you just get some extra stuff and bennies. It just sets you up for the next campaign. It was fine. I'm glad we did it. It wouldn't hurt you if you didn't have the Onward Odyssey, which is the epilogue for the first two cycles. But for me, crossing that finish line when the pacing has driven us for it. Like we have been so hungry for this game. We cross that finish line and that moment of so good. The other thing that I want to talk about is fatigue. And I'm not talking about being tired because you played for 12 hours. I'm talking about being tired because you've played a game for 120 hours. So when I finished ISS Vanguard, it was a great end. It was like Mass Effect, right? Like, okay, well, some people shout all over the Mass Effect 3 ending. I liked Mass Effect. I didn't mind the ending. They redid the ending. I didn't even play it. I was like, well, the ending's the ending. That's what it is. Because for me, it was the experience. It was the experience started through. We finished yesterday, and it was like, it's about dinner time. It was about 6 when we actually finished the final battle. And we ended up going through and doing the epilogue and whatever. And we got to the end of the epilogue. And I turned to Super Trooper and said, look, it's quite late. You want to take Beelzebubbles home? I'll pack this away. And he's like, no, I've got time. Because at the end of 120 hours, whatever we put into that, we still wanted more. So because of course we had to pull everything apart, reset all of Cycle 1 to pack it away. We'd had to pull everything up for Cycle 2, find all the minis for Cycle 2, get it all out, reset the box. So I've got this little card box with all the cards and the map tiles, and we reset it all up. And so we're ready to start Cycle 2. Now, I have a week off next month. I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to be playing a fair bit of ATO in that week off, because Super Trooper also has the week off. And so I know we've got a few game days planned. We'll be recording some bonus content during that week, but I suspect we'll be playing it. Because are we tired of Aeon Trespass? No fucking way are we tired of Aeon Trespass. Now, if you had said to me a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you're going to play this game, and after 120 hours, whatever the hours are, you're going to be ostensibly 1/5 of the way through the game, I would have gone, dude, you can stick that in your pipe and smoke it, because there's no way I've got 600 hours or 500 hours to spend on a game. Last night, Super Trooper went home. There is like a spiritual sequel to Aeon Trespass called The 12 Sins of Heracles. I love mythology. I love the Heracles mythos. And I'm sitting there going, do I order the 12 Sins of Heracles? Because at this rate, at the rate of play, we still have 2 years of Aeon Trespass to play. And I looked at it long and hard last night. I'm like, 12 Sins of Heracles. It's Aeon Trespass. It's like Aeon Trespass, more Aeon Trespass with new mythology and new, like, ooh. No, look. Spoiler alert, I did not. Largely because to get 12 Sins of Heracles with all the bells and whistles, it's well over $1,000 Australian. And I'm like, I've got enormity. I had to go, pause. I've got ATO in space coming. It's all paid for. It's all good. I'll be okay. Because we do have, if we're averaging 6 months a cycle for Aeon Trespass, we have 2 years of Aeon Trespass ahead of us before we're done. But almost, I won't say if you're listening, I know Super Trooper listening to this in the morning on his way to work. I almost hit the button on it last night because it was that good. I finished Cycle 1 with Super Trooper, and I just wanted more. Good news is, we got more coming. That finish line for me last night was so good. Will I ever play Cycle 1 again? No way. Because the joy of good campaigns for me are in the reveal. Will I play ISS Vanguard again? No. I have the ISS Vanguard epilogue campaign, which I can't remember what it's called. I talked about this last episode. I can't remember what it's called. I have it. I don't know if I'll play it. Because ISS Vanguard's done. It was great. It's sitting there. I probably will, because it's sitting there. Will I play Tainted Grail again? Yes. And I'll tell you why. Because in the Tainted Grail campaign, when you're playing it, everything you choose carves out at least 50% of the game that you've not experienced. So if I play Tainted Grail with the other two characters, because I played it two-handed, it is going to be a different game. Because the narrative is different, the stories are different, the choices you have open to are different. So, Tainted Grail is currently in Super Trooper's house. He's playing Tainted Grail solo. When it's done, it'll go back in rotation. And at some point in the future, I will play it again. Because you can. Will I play Cycle 1 and Trespass? No. Cycle 1, 2, and 3 are in one box. I can tell you unequivocally, once we finish Cycle 3, I will go in a box with all the painted minis, and I will be selling it because I will never play it again. not because it's not amazing, but because it's the emergent experience, and the crossing of that finish line is the joy. And crossing the finish line twice, you can't scratch the same itch twice, right? The itch is gone. But let me tell you, crossing that finish line last night, oh, so good. This week, give me someone the clap. God, really, the world's going to hell. Do I give it to Israel and Iran for showing the rest of the world how to work out your differences without resorting to violence? Do I give it to Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz, who showed us what two grown men look like when they're trying to imitate spider monkeys throwing shit at each other? I mean, honestly, the choices are endless today. Like, oh my God, if you haven't seen that interview, go watch that interview. It's one of the most bonkers bits of, in quotes, journalism you will ever watch. So we talked about my work life. We talked about what's going on. You know what I'm going to do this week? The clap. It goes to my fucking slow cooker. And I'll tell you why. Because it's my job in this family. And it should be my job because I'm a chef. To make dinner for this family. But when I don't get home till 6:45. And I've got all my family members sitting there who are literally starving to death if I don't cook for them. They will not survive. If I stop cooking in this house, my family will literally die. They will sit around waiting for dinner to appear on the table until they die. That's my family. So what I can do is I put shit in the slow cooker, and at 6 a.m. when I leave for work, I hit go, and when I get home at 6:30, dinner's ready. I'm not even going to do a canned clap for this one, guys. Here's to you, motherfucker. If you have a busy life and you don't have a slow cooker, what are you doing? Honestly, stupid. Well, what's coming? Let's see. So we've talked about my work situation. Because I'm going to have a little bit of a gap in work, one of the great things we're doing is the Fox and the Peanut and I, we're going to pop over to Canada for a few weeks to see my parents, to see some of my friends. That's amazing. It's summer in Canada. So we're going to leave this winter bullshit behind. We're going to pop over to Canada for a bit. So hoping to get a couple of episodes in the can before we go with Super Trooper so that, you guys are not left alone for 3 weeks, because you guys can't be trusted to be left alone for 3 weeks. PlayCon's coming. PlayCon is a board game playing, not a board game buying conference that happens every year. Well, this is the second year. Hopefully it happens every year, run by the Legends of Board Game Barbecue. Sold out, so you can't go if you're not going. But if you are going, I'm going to be there with a bunch of the OMC crew. Super Trooper's going to be there. Battleships is going to be there. Voldemort's going to be there. Most of us, we can't talk about Voldemort. He who must not be named. But 3 or 4 of us, we're going to be in our OMC shirts. Tap us on the shoulder, say hi, have a chat with us if you see us. We're going to be there playing games for all 3 days. We will be there in the queue to get in first. We will be there till they throw us out at 10 to midnight. So if you're going to PlayCon, we will see you there. And that concludes this week's therapy session. Thank you, OMC crew, for your listening ear and for spending 60 minutes of your commute time, your dishwashing time, your time on the toilet, wherever you are. We are all the one man. You can find me on all the socials. Find me on Facebook by searching One Man Clapping. Instagram, you can send me an email, blah, 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 whatever you like. You can help OMC by dropping me a like on Facebook or Instagram. Leave a review on whatever platform you like. If it's a bad review, I will find you. I have a particular set of skills. No, I don't give a shit. If it's a bad review, just go for it. This episode has been brought to you by the aforementioned slow cooker. I am 51. 51? 51. I turned 51 this year. Dear Lord. And I love my slow cooker. I don't love it, actually. I have a relationship with my slow cooker that is adequate. It doesn't give me enough, but that's okay. Thank you as always for your time. Your time is precious, and the fact that you chose to spend an hour of it listening to how I spend my time is always humbling. Until next time, get your game on, even if you've got to play with yourself, because no one cares. Play with yourself all you like. Peace out, mofos.
Locked in the bunker, shadows shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pounding, hearts they quake. In the bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown sound.
I wonder if I can get a job playing board games. Not reviewing, just playing.